In 1954, a trucker pulled off Route 66 outside Amarillo, sat down at a chrome counter, and ordered a hot roast beef sandwich for 65 cents. He did not know he was living through the golden age of American eating. Number 14 on this list was so beloved that diners kept the pot simmering 24 hours a day. And number 3 would soon be replaced by something that changed this country forever. Hit that subscribe button, because these are the 25 foods Americans actually ordered before fast food took it all away. Number 25, the open-faced hot roast beef sandwich. This was the meal a hungry man ordered when he wanted to feel taken care of. 2 slices of soft white bread laid flat on the plate, piled with thin sliced roast beef, then buried under a ladle of brown gravy so hot it steamed when it hit the table. Beside it, a scoop of mashed potatoes with a well pressed into the center, and that well filled with gravy too. There was no picking this up with your hands. This was a knife and fork sandwich, eaten slow. In 1954, it cost about 65 cents at a roadside diner along the interstate routes that were just beginning to stitch the country together. The gravy came from the drippings of the roast that had cooked all morning, thickened with flour, seasoned with nothing but salt and pepper, and patience. Truckers ordered it because it stuck to your ribs through 400 miles of night driving. Nobody makes it this way anymore. The gravy comes from a packet now, if it comes at all. Number 24, the EGG Cream. Here is a drink with a name that lies to you. There was no egg in an egg cream, and there was no cream either. There was cold, whole milk, a long squirt of chocolate syrup, and a hard blast of seltzer from the fountain gun that foamed the whole thing into a creamy head that looked like the top of a beer. The soda jerk built it in a specific order: syrup first, then milk, then the seltzer shot at an angle to raise the foam. Get the order wrong, and it fell flat. A good egg cream cost a nickel in a New York luncheonette in 1952, and it was the drink of tenement kids and cab drivers and the men who worked the garment district. The chocolate had to be a specific brand of syrup, and old-timers will still argue about which one. Order an egg cream in most of America today, and the counter person will stare at you. It vanished with the fountains that made it. Number 23, chicken a la king. This dish sounded fancy, and that was exactly the point. Diced cooked chicken, mushrooms, and pimentos folded into a rich cream sauce, then ladled over toast points, a split biscuit, or a nest of egg noodles. It arrived pale and elegant, flecked with red pepper, steam rising off the top. For a working family stopping at a roadside diner on a Sunday drive, ordering chicken a la king felt like ordering room service at a hotel. It cost about 85 cents in the mid-1950s, and it was how a cook stretched the meat off a couple of stewing hens into a dozen orders. The sauce did the heavy lifting. The chicken was almost a garnish. It appeared on every diner menu in America and at every ladies' luncheon and church supper from Maine to California. Today it survives mostly as a punchline about beige cafeteria food, but in its time, it was the taste of aspiration. Number 22, creamed chipped beef on toast. Every man who served in World War II or Korea knew this dish by an unprintable nickname, and every one of them ate it anyway. Thin sheets of dried, heavily salted beef torn into ribbons and stirred into a thick white sauce of butter, flour, and milk, then poured steaming over 2 slices of toast. The salt of the beef seasoned the whole sauce, so the cook barely had to add anything else. At a roadside diner, it ran about 40 cents, one of the cheapest hot plates on the board, which is exactly why it stayed on the board. Veterans ordered it out of nostalgia, and everyone else ordered it because it was fast, filling, and warm on a cold morning. The toast went soft and custardy underneath the weight of the gravy. It was ugly, gray, and utterly satisfying. Diners served it for breakfast, lunch, and the graveyard shift. You will not find it on a menu today, outside of a handful of stubborn old counters. Number 21, the Denver sandwich. Sometimes called a Western, this was the sandwich that turned 3 eggs and a handful of scraps into a whole meal. Beaten eggs poured onto the griddle with diced ham, chopped onion, and green bell pepper, cooked flat like an omelet, then folded and slapped between two slices of buttered toast. The theory, passed down for a century, was that railroad cooks and pioneer wives invented it to mask the taste of eggs that were starting to turn, the onion and pepper covering any off flavor. By the 1950s, it was a diner breakfast staple, sizzling on every griddle in America for about 45 cents. The edges of the egg crisped against the hot steel while the center stayed tender. You could eat it with one hand while you drove. It was the original breakfast sandwich, decades before a drive-through window ever sold you one, and almost nobody orders it by name anymore. Number 20, the bowl of red. Long before chili came in a can with a celebrity's face on it, it came in a heavy white diner bowl, and Texans and Oklahomans called it a bowl of red. Ground beef or coarsely chopped chuck simmered for hours with dried chili peppers, cumin, garlic, and onion until the meat went tender and the whole thing turned a deep brick color. Real diner chili had few beans, or none at all, because beans were what you added to stretch the meat when times were tight, and a good chili parlor wanted you tasting the meat. A bowl cost about 30 cents in 1953, served with a sleeve of crackers crumbled on top and a raw onion on the side. Truck stops kept a pot going around the clock. The chili got better the longer it sat, so the bowl you got at 3 a.m. was often the best one of the day. Chili parlors were their own institution, and most of them are gone now. Number 19, liver and onions. Here is a plate that a whole generation grew up dreading, and a whole generation before them grew up loving. Beef liver, sliced thin, dredged in seasoned flour, and laid into a hot skillet for barely 2 minutes aside, because any longer turned it to shoe leather. Over the top went a mountain of onions, cooked slow in the pan drippings until they collapsed into sweet golden ribbons. Served with mashed potatoes and green beans, it was one of the most nutritious meals in America, and one of the cheapest, about 50 cents at a diner counter. Liver was iron and protein for pennies, and butchers practically gave it away. Cooked right, it was mild and rich and faintly sweet under all those onions. Cooked wrong, which it usually was, it turned bitter and tough, and that is the version most people remember. We stopped ordering it the moment we could afford steak, and the knowledge of how to cook it correctly walked out the door with the cooks who knew. Number 18, the tuna melt. A can of tuna, a spoon of mayonnaise, a little diced celery and onion piled onto rye bread, blanketed with a slice of American cheese, and pressed flat on the griddle until the bread went gold and the cheese ran down over the sides. The griddle was the whole secret. A cold tuna sandwich was lunch counter ordinary, but put it on the flat top with butter and cheese, and it became something people drove out of their way for. It cost about 45 cents in 1955, and it turned the cheapest protein in the pantry into a hot, gooey, satisfying plate. The edges crisped, the cheese sealed the whole thing together, and it came cut on the diagonal with a pickle spear and a handful of chips. Diner cooks made 100 of them a day. It still shows up here and there, but the versions that made their reputation, built by a short-order cook working a lunch rush with a spatula in each hand, are getting harder to find. First pattern break. Here is what most people never understood about the roadside diner. It was not a restaurant. It was a machine built for speed, and it ran on a language all its own. When you ordered, the waitress did not write it down. She called it out to the cook in code. Adam and Eve on a raft meant 2 poached eggs on toast. Wreck 'em meant scramble them. Burn the British was a toasted English muffin. 96 meant you were out of something. A blue plate special was the cheap full dinner of the day, served on a divided plate that kept the gravy off the peas. And it was the deal that fed the American working class every single day. The counter was where a banker sat next to a bricklayer, and both paid the same 65 cents. Nobody dressed up. Nobody was turned away. The diner was one of the few genuinely democratic rooms in America, and its food was built to be made fast, sold cheap, and eaten by anyone. That is the thing fast food would eventually copy and hollow out. Number 17, the cherry phosphate. Before soda came in a bottle you carried out the door, it was built in front of you at the fountain, one glass at a time. A cherry phosphate started with a pump of cherry syrup and a few drops of acid phosphate, a slightly sour solution that gave the drink its tang and its name, then filled the rest of the way with a blast of cold seltzer. It fizzed and bit and tasted like nothing that comes out of a can today. A Lime Ricky worked the same way with lime. These cost a nickel, and the soda jerk who built them was a minor celebrity in every small town. A teenager in a paper hat working the levers like an organist. Kids spent their afternoons on those swivel stools, nursing a phosphate and reading comics off the rack. When bottling in the supermarket took over, the fountain died, and the phosphate died with it. Most Americans alive today have never tasted one. Number 16, Salisbury steak. Do not let the name fool you. This was a hamburger patty dressed up for dinner, and it fooled generations of Americans into thinking they were eating steak. Ground beef mixed with breadcrumbs, egg, and minced onion, shaped into an oval patty, browned hard, then simmered in a rich brown mushroom and onion gravy until it drank the flavor in. Served over mashed potatoes with the gravy poured over everything, it was the definition of a satisfying diner supper for about 75 cents. The dish was named after a 19th century doctor who prescribed beef for health. But by the 1950s, it was pure comfort food. The blue plate special on 100 Tuesday menus. The gravy hid the fact that the beef was cheap. The name hid the fact that it was a burger. Everybody knew, and nobody cared, because it was warm, and it was filling, and it cost less than $1. TV dinners eventually stole the name and ruined the reputation. Number 15, corned beef, hash, and eggs. In a real diner, hash was not something poured from a can. It was made from the corned beef left over from yesterday, chopped fine with cooked potato and onion, then pressed onto the hot griddle and left alone until a deep brown crust formed on the bottom. That crust was the entire point. A good short-order cook would not touch it, would not stir it, would let it sit and build that mahogany bark before flipping it in slabs. Topped with 2 eggs cooked over easy so the yolk ran down into the hash, it was breakfast for a man who worked with his hands. It cost about 55 cents, and it used up scraps that would otherwise be thrown out, which is exactly why diners love to make it, and cooks took pride in it. The canned version killed the reputation of the real thing. Griddle-crusted hash from actual leftover corned beef is a nearly lost art. Number 14, grilled cheese and a bowl of tomato soup. This is the one the diner kept going all day long. 2 slices of white bread, plenty of butter on the outside, a couple of slices of American cheese between, pressed on the griddle under a weight until the outside went crisp and gold and the inside turned to molten ribbon. Beside it, a bowl of tomato soup, creamy and slightly sweet, made for dunking. The whole plate cost about 35 cents in 1955, and it was the meal a mother ordered for a child. A secretary ordered on a lunch break. A lonely traveler ordered because it tasted like being home. The magic was in the griddle and the butter, not the ingredients, which cost almost nothing. You tore the corner off the sandwich, dropped it in the soup, and fished it out soft and orange and perfect. It is one of the few dishes on this list that survived, but the version that made its name, built by hand on a butter-slicked flat top, is not the one coming out of most kitchens today. Number 13, meatloaf, the blue plate. No dish said diner supper like a thick slab of meatloaf. Ground beef bound with breadcrumbs, egg, onion, and a good hit of ketchup or brown sauce, packed into a loaf pan, baked until the top caramelized, then sliced thick, and served with a ladle of gravy or a smear of the ketchup glaze from the top. Beside it, mashed potatoes and whatever vegetable was cheap that week, all of it landing on the divided blue plate for about 70 cents. The breadcrumbs and onions stretched a single pound of beef across 5 or 6 orders, which is why every diner in America made it, and made it daily. It was the taste of a home kitchen sold to people who were far from home. The leftover slices got fried up the next morning and put on toast. Meatloaf still exists, but the everyday diner version, the one that anchored the weeknight menu of the whole country, has quietly faded out. Number 12. The Patty Melt. Here is a sandwich that could only have been born on a diner griddle. A thin beef patty, cooked hard and fast, laid on rye bread with a pile of onions, caramelized low and slow in the corner of the flat top, topped with Swiss cheese. Then the whole thing buttered and pressed until the bread crisped and the cheese melted into the onions. It was somewhere between a burger and a grilled cheese, and better than both. It cost about 55 cents, and it made a cheap patty taste like a splurge because the onions and the toasted rye did the work. This was the sandwich the regulars ordered, the one that told the cook you knew the menu. It never became a franchise the way the plain hamburger did, so it stayed a diner secret. You can still find it, but only at counters old enough to remember it, and there are fewer of those every year. Number 11. Chicken fried steak with cream gravy. Take the cheapest, toughest cut of beef in the case, a piece of round steak that would break your jaw if you just grilled it. Pound it thin, dredge it in seasoned flour, dip it in egg, dredge it again, and fry it in a hot skillet like a piece of chicken until the crust shattered and the meat inside went tender. Then make a peppery white gravy from the drippings and pour it over the whole plate. This was the meal that fed Texas and Oklahoma and every diner along the southern routes, about 75 cents with mashed potatoes and biscuits. It was Depression thinking dressed as a feast, a way to make a 30-cent cut of meat eat like a steak dinner. The crust was the achievement, crisp and craggy and clinging to the meat. Done right, it was one of the great American plates. Most kitchens now buy it frozen and pre-breaded, and the difference is night and day. Number 10. The hot turkey sandwich, the cousin of the hot roast beef, and just as beloved. Sliced roast turkey laid over white bread, buried in pale turkey gravy with mashed potatoes and a scoop of stuffing crowded onto the plate beside it, and often a spoonful of cranberry sauce for color. It was Thanksgiving dinner available on a random Wednesday in March for about 70 cents. Diners roasted turkey specifically to keep this on the menu because a single bird produced dozens of orders, and the carcass made the gravy. For a traveler far from family, ordering the hot turkey plate was a way to feel. For 10 minutes at a chrome counter, like somebody had cooked for you. The bread went soft and rich under the gravy. You needed a fork and knife and a nap afterward. It is almost extinct now, a casualty of the deli slicer and the prepackaged sandwich. Second pattern break. Here is what nobody tells you about why these foods disappeared. It was not that they stopped tasting good. It was math, and it was land. In 1955, a man named Ray Kroc opened his first franchise of a hamburger stand in Illinois, and the whole model of American eating began to shift under everyone's feet. The diner was slow by design. A cook made your food when you ordered it, one plate at a time, by hand, with skill that took years to build. The new model needed none of that. It needed a frozen patty, a timer, and a teenager. It could go up on cheap highway land instead of expensive Main Street. It could feed a family of 4 in 90 seconds and never once call anyone by name. The diner could not compete on speed or price, and one by one the counters emptied out. We did not lose these foods because we stopped loving them. We lost them because someone figured out how to sell us something faster, and we let the skill that made the real thing quietly die. Number 9. The malted milkshake. Not just a milkshake, a malted. The difference was a spoonful of malted milk powder, a sweet, toasty, slightly nutty powder that turned an ordinary shake into something with depth and body. The soda jerk scooped hard ice cream into the tall steel cup, added milk and flavored syrup, and that crucial scoop of malt. then locked it onto the green spindle mixer that whirred it into a thick, frosty blend. He poured it into a fluted glass and set the steel cup down beside it too, because there was always more than the glass could hold. A malt cost about 20 cents, and it was the centerpiece of every teenage date in America. 2 straws, 1 glass, an afternoon at the counter. Plain milkshakes survived the fast food era. The malt, the real one built by hand with malt powder, largely did not. Ask for one now, and most places have never heard of it. Number 8. The diet plate. This is the one that will surprise people. In the health-conscious 1950s, when the president himself was watching his heart, nearly every diner offered a diet plate, and people actually ordered it. A scoop of cottage cheese, a canned peach half, or a ring of pineapple, a lettuce leaf, sometimes a hamburger patty with no bun sitting right there beside the fruit. It cost about 60 cents, and it was considered the sophisticated, modern, figure-conscious choice. The meal a woman ordered when she was watching her waistline, and a businessman ordered when his doctor had a word with him. The combination of cottage cheese and canned fruit sounds strange to us now, almost sad, but at the time it was aspirational, the taste of self-control and modern nutrition. It appeared on menus coast to coast for 2 solid decades. Then diet culture changed. Cottage cheese fell out of fashion, and the diet plate quietly vanished from the American table entirely. Number 7. Yankee pot roast. This was the Sunday dinner a diner sold every day of the week. A tough, cheap chuck roast, browned hard, then set into a low oven or a covered pot with onions, carrots, and celery, and left to cook for hours until the connective tissue melted and the meat fell apart at the touch of a fork. The liquid it cooked in became the gravy, thick and deep and beefy. Served in slices with the vegetables and a pile of mashed potatoes. It cost about 85 cents, and it made the toughest, most affordable cut in the butcher's case taste like the finest meal in town. Diners loved it because it cooked itself while the cook worked the griddle, and because a single roast fed the counter all afternoon. It was the smell that pulled people in off the road, the smell of a kitchen where somebody had been cooking since dawn. Slow food in a fast world, which is exactly why it could not survive the drive-thru. Number 6. The fried clam roll. Along the coastal routes of New England, the roadside stand and the diner sold something the rest of the country never fully understood. Whole belly clams, dipped in evaporated milk and dredged in a fine corn flour, dropped into hot fat until they turned crisp and golden and sweet, then piled into a split-top hot dog bun that had been buttered and toasted on the flat top. A clam roll cost about 50 cents in the 1950s, and it was the taste of a summer drive to the shore, eaten at a picnic table with the ocean in earshot. The whole belly was the point, tender and briny inside its crisp shell, nothing like the rubbery strips that came later. This was regional food at its finest, tied to a place and a season and a way of frying that took a practiced hand. It still exists in pockets of New England, but as a national diner staple, it faded with the independent stands that made it. Number 5. The club sandwich. Here was the diner's showpiece, the sandwich you ordered when you wanted the works. 3 slices of toasted bread, stacked into 2 layers, 1 of sliced turkey or chicken with mayonnaise, 1 of bacon, lettuce, and tomato. The whole tower cut into 4 triangles and pinned together with frilled toothpicks. It arrived standing tall on the plate, ringed with a fan of potato chips and a pickle, looking like more food than one person could possibly eat, for about 75 cents. The club was the sandwich of train cars and hotel counters and the nicer diners, the order that said you were treating yourself. Getting it right took assembly, timing the toast and the bacon and building the stack so it did not collapse. It still appears on menus, but the hand-built, toothpick-pinned, chip-ringed version that made it a small event has mostly been flattened into something a machine could assemble. Number 4. The banana split. When a family wanted to celebrate, this is what landed on the table, and every child at the counter stopped talking when it went by. a banana split lengthwise, laid in a long boat-shaped dish, cradling 3 scoops of ice cream, vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry in a row. Over the vanilla went pineapple, over the chocolate went chocolate syrup, over the strawberry went strawberry sauce, and the whole thing was crowned with whipped cream, chopped nuts, and 3 maraschino cherries. It cost about 39 cents, and it was built by the soda jerk with the care of a man assembling a monument, because a banana split was a performance as much as a dessert. Families split one 4 ways. Teenagers dared each other to finish one alone. It was pure joy in a dish, and the soda fountain that made it possible is exactly the thing fast food replaced with a soft serve cone out a window. Third pattern break. Here is the truth underneath all of it. These 25 foods were not just meals. They were made by people, in front of people, for people. The soda jerk knew your name and your usual. The waitress called you honey and remembered you took your coffee black. The short order cook could run 6 orders in his head at once and never wrote a thing down. The food was cheap because it was clever, built from scraps and cheap cuts and the daily leftover, turned into something worth driving for by hands that had done it 10,000 times. When we traded the diner for the drive-thru, we did not just change what we ate. We changed how we ate and who we ate around, and whether anyone behind the counter knew we existed at all. The Blue Plate Special fed a country where a bricklayer and a banker sat elbow to elbow at the same counter and paid the same price. That room is nearly gone now, and it took a whole way of eating with it. Number 3, the Cheeseburger Deluxe. Here is the food that would grow up to conquer the world, and in the 1950s diner it was still made by hand, one at a time. And it was glorious. A ball of fresh ground beef smashed flat on a screaming hot griddle, seared until the edges went lacy and brown, a slice of American cheese laid on to melt in the last minute, then built on a toasted bun with lettuce, tomato, onion, and pickle. The deluxe meant it came with a pile of French fries and a scoop of coleslaw, all for about 45 cents. This was the burger before the franchise got hold of it. Seasoned by a cook who cared, dressed to order, no two exactly alike. The irony is bitter and complete. This exact food, the diner cheeseburger, is what the fast food chains studied, stripped down, sped up, and sold back to America until the diners that invented the craft closed their doors for good. We still eat it every day. We just stopped eating the real one. Number 2, pie, a la mode. No diner counter was complete without the glass case of pies rotating slowly under a light, and no meal was complete without a slice. Apple, cherry, lemon meringue, coconut cream, banana cream, pumpkin in the fall. All of it baked in-house or brought in fresh from a local baker every morning. A slice cost about 20 cents, and 25 got you at a la mode, with a scoop of vanilla ice cream melting into the warm crust. The apple came heated on the griddle so the ice cream ran. The cream pies stood tall, with meringue browned in peaks. Pie was the reason a lot of men came in at all. The thing they ordered with a cup of coffee at 3 in the afternoon just to sit a while. A diner lived or died on its pie, and the good ones were famous for miles. Factory pie in a plastic clamshell replaced it. And the difference is the difference between something made by a person and something made by a machine. Number 1, the bottomless cup of coffee. At the top of this list is not a dish at all. It is the thing that held the whole diner together, the ritual that made all the rest of it possible. A heavy white porcelain mug, filled and refilled from the pot the waitress carried up and down the counter all day long for a nickel, and after that first nickel, often for free. Diner coffee was not fancy. It was strong, hot, a little burnt from sitting on the warmer, and it was perfect. It was the excuse to sit. It was what the trucker drank to stay awake, what the old men nursed all morning over a newspaper, what came automatically the moment you sat down, before you even ordered. Warm you up, hun? and the pot tipped again. That bottomless cup was the beating heart of the American diner, an act of generosity built into the price of everything else. It said you were welcome to stay as long as you liked. Fast food replaced it with a paper cup and a clock counting down how fast they could get you out the door. We did not just lose the coffee, we lost the invitation to sit. Here is my challenge. Find one of these this week. The hot roast beef sandwich, the tuna melt, the banana split, the malt made with real malt powder. Order it, or better yet, make it at home the way it was made then, by hand, slow, for someone you love. Then come back and tell me if I am wrong. Tell me if it was just nostalgia, or if we really did trade something worth keeping for a bag handed through a window. Drop the one you are going to try in the comments. I want to know if the Cheeseburger Deluxe gets more love than the pie a la mode. Because these were not just diner foods. They were a way of eating that treated a stranger like a neighbor, and we let it slip away one closed counter at a time.